back to yet another edition of the SBK betting podcast, and we've got a real good one this week for everyone. We've got the final classic of the season in the UK in the shape of the St. Leger, and it's also Irish Champions weekend. Plenty of Group 1 action, lots to look into. We're going to focus on the two feature races, the St. Leger at Doncaster and the Irish Champion Stakes at Leopardstown on Saturday. No Ross Millar, but I'm delighted to be in the company of Tom Collins, who's going to provide us with all his insight and expert opinion, and we'll see if we agree, disagree, and where we'll land for our selections for this week. So TC, it looks to me that you've recovered from that burn of yours, and you're glowing at least now after the third-degree burns that you ensued over the bank holiday weekend.
Yeah, looking better than ever, I think, is what you meant to say there, Jess. The burns are gone, thankfully. I mean, look at the weather outside. The fact that I actually had burns in the first place is a bit remarkable. But we're back. We're flying. Had a few winners in the US in the last week, a few UK winners. So really looking forward to this Saturday's action. As you say, Doncaster and Leopardstown, top quality racing. I don't actually think the two races we're going to cover are the best. But you know what? Doesn't matter how good they are. We can still find winners.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that, especially when it gets to the St. Leger itself. Obviously, 1 mile, 6.5 furlongs for the 3-year-olds. And we've seen some remarkable horses win the St. Leger in the past, and we've also seen some really good horse races. And, you know, you only think of last year, Hurricane Lane, when he won, and going back years, Kew Gardens, the Simple Verse, Drama, and obviously Logician is in there as well. But this year sort of lacks a real standout, I feel. According to the market, it is New London, who's a pretty short price to essentially give Godolphin and Charlie Appleby back-to-back victories in this race. And at a price of 5 to 6, it's whether he is opposable or not. We've also got Eldar Alderov, who's represented for Roger Varian, who's absolutely flying at the moment, needs to bounce back from quite a disappointing run last time at Longchamp Yamal for George Bowie. Can he get his second classic of the season en route back to the Melbourne Cup? And then a bit of a fly in the ointment is the filly Hascoy, and she's been supplemented at a big price for Rafe Beckett and Frankie Dettori. You've also got Irish competition in the shape of French Claim for Paddy Toomey and Emily Dickinson, the mount of Sean Levy. So those are the main protagonists. TC, how have you worked out this race? Because we know that there's a good bit of rain around. You need a dour stayer, someone that will get the trip. Is this price too short, do you think, for New London?
I mean, it's certainly a question. When I was looking through this race, I was just trying to find horses that actually had a bona fide chance of winning a general St. Leger, an average St. Leger. And I really found it a struggle, I have to say. I was going through the whole field, looking at the outsiders, looking at the ones that are, middle of the range in the market, as well as the favourites. And I just came down on New London in the end. I don't think there's too much value in his price. I think he should be around even money. So he is a shade of odds on, and that potentially is a reason why others may look to oppose him. But this just really is a St. Leger that just falls miles below the curve. If you look back in the last decade, you generally have loads of horses in the fields rated 110 or higher. For example, last year, 7 of the 10 runners in the St. Leger are rated 110 or higher. Even Simple versus St. Leger, which in my opinion was the worst in the last 10 years, back in 2015, there were 3 horses rated 110 or higher out of 7 runners. This year, there's just 2 horses rated 110 or higher, which suggests it's a pretty weak race. And talking of Simple Verse, she was the last filly to win this back in 2015. Prior to that, you have to go back to 1992 for the most recent filly since Simple Verse. So there are a couple of fillies in here, in Hascoy and Emily Dickinson, that I think are actually live outsiders. And Hascoy is one of 2 horses that I can actually think wins this race and can run to the average of 120, which you generally need to win this classic. The other is New London, and that's why I've come down on him. Hascoy needs to find £13 on her last effort to reach the average of this race. I think that's perfectly plausible. She was good at York, but at the same time, it was a bit of a leap of faith for me to go in on her at a relatively short price. So New London's just the one. He's been moving up the grades rapidly. He was really impressive last time out in a race that's worked out nicely. The runner-up Deauville Legend has subsequently won the Great Voltager, so that form was given a good boost. And New London was always considered a Derby horse until he lost at Chester. And even that race at Chester, which is his sole defeat in his career behind changing of the guard, he just didn't have the run of the race. He had to close up a huge gap in a small field to even get close to changing of the guard, who was perfectly rated on the front end, and then just quick and clear. New London just didn't really have a chance of winning that. And I don't think the track suited either. So put a line through that effort. And you've got a real up-and-coming improving horse in here who's technically unbeaten, if you put a line through that, representing probably our best trainer at the moment in Charlie Appleby. And he's rated 115, which is the general level of horse you need to win this race.
Yeah, look, if Ross Millar was here, it'd be like, TC, obvious. Surely there are some question marks here. We can't be just siding with this short price favourite. You know, you've got, as you say, a very weak race, an open race, and you think Rafe Beckett, fair enough, they're throwing a filly into this. They don't have Westover. They may as well chance their arm. Why not Who Yamal then? There's the one horse that you haven't mentioned, considering that he clearly has shown that he can stay. He's been talked up massively by Gay Waterhouse this week about the fact that he just wins. And he is going to be a Melbourne Cup horse. So he's running to a very high standard. And actually, he's officially a pound higher than New London.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a player in here. I do think that official rating is slightly inflated. I don't necessarily think he's a better horse than New London. And even if you look back to the Gordon Stakes at Glorious Goodwood, he finished third behind New London, 2 lengths back. Now, Ryan did drop his whip that day, and therefore you can make a case that Hu Yamal should have finished closer. But I think New London was the best horse in that race. And for me, it's just really hard to see Hu Yamal overturning the form, especially considering his only race since was an egg and spoon 4-runner affair at Goodwood featuring horses that just shouldn't be competing in Group 3 company, let alone even challenging Hu Yamal. I think the second favourite there was rated 98, and then the other two, they're handicappers. So I don't know. I think Hu Yamal is a player, but I do think the official mark is a bit inflated. I don't think that Derby run can necessarily be taken literally. But look, if you fancy him, then there are positives there, especially given the lack of talented opposition. I mean, he should probably be second favourite. Eldar Eldarov, rated 109, currently second in the market. I mean, I wasn't impressed with him in the Queen's Vase. I know he won that race, but to me, he wasn't the best. He just got given the best ride. And then last time out in the Grand Prix de Paris, I thought it was very disappointing. So I can certainly see the case for Hu Yamal.
Yeah, look, I'm gonna stick with him because I disagree that the on the face value of it, when he was second to Desert Crown, who I know is one of your favourite horses in training, that was a slightly fluky, lucky position he was in, and at 150 to 1, he was that price for a reason. But actually, since then, he has proved that was no fluke, and I think he stays very well. And that's the big element for me compared to the favourite New London. Is that at Goodwood, that was just short of the trip that he really wants. I think New London, he might just be found out for stamina against Hu Yamal, especially if they get any more rain over the next 24 hours. So Hu Yamal for me, it's a better price. I can't question George Bowie and what he can do with all types of horses, and 13 to 2 is a pretty sound price as well against that favourite New London. So we'll take opposing sides for this one, TC, and wish you the best of luck. That is the St. Ledger, which is at 3:30. Only 15 minutes later, we have the Irish Champion Stakes. Now, as mentioned a little bit earlier, we've got the Irish Champions weekend throughout the whole 2 days of Saturday and Sunday, and there's better Group 1s, definitely the Matron Stakes being one of them. But the Champion Stakes has always been the absolute pivotal crowning moment of this weekend, and a big effort is in and around making this the real highlight in the showpiece, with €1 million up for grabs. Last year was probably one of the races of the season between St. Mark's Basilica and Tanawa. Magicals won this twice, Roaring Lion, and Almanzor, importantly, won this for Jean-Claude Rouget back in 2016. So the question is, TC, with Vadeni, the current favourite with Christophe Soumillon on board, and Mishriff jocked up with Colin Keane on board for John and Thady Gosden, can Vadeni give Jean-Claude Rouget a second win in this race?
I mean, he definitely can. This is a real informed 3-year-old. Jean-Claude Rouget, as you said, has won this race before with Almanzor. It's an interesting piece of placement, and I don't think this is the best Irish Champion Stakes you'll ever see either. In fact, much like the St. Ledger, I think this revolves around the two highest rated and best horses at the top of the market, in Vadeni and Mishriff. They've faced before in the Eclipse, and only half a length separated them. Vadeni won, Mishriff was second. My opinion is that Mishriff was the best horse that day, and he was giving Vadeni £10. Obviously, he got hampered as the field were kind of concertinaing together with a furlong to go, whereas Vadeni got a brilliant ride down the outside, used his turn of foot to great effect, and he kicked clear and eventually won. Mishriff gets a £4 swing in the weights this time around, only has to give Vadeni £6. And that was kind of my reasoning for going against Vadeni and actually backing Mishriff, as well as the price. You get slightly bigger odds on Jonathan Gosden's runner. I like the booking of Colin Keane. And actually, the major tick in the box for Mishriff, I think, is last time out in the Jubbon International. Yes, he was stuffed by Baid, but Baid is a superstar. There's no point of even looking into the winning margin that day. Mishriff actually ran within £3 of his career best in the Jubbon International. He bounced right back to something like his best, and actually he broke on terms for the first time this season. I think the commentator said after the first stride he was actually away the quickest. I think that's a massive tick in the box of Mishriff. If he does that again here, he'll be in front of Vadeni, and Vadeni will have to run down Mishriff. I'm not 100% sure that's going to happen. So I'll stick with Jonathan Gosden's runner.
Interestingly, that the handicap actually put him down £3 for that effort. I think they just inflated Baid's even more. But yeah, Mishriff, he's looking for his first win since the Jubbon International. That's kind of sort of played on a lot of people's minds when they look at Mishriff. Why? How has he not been winning? Is he just bumping into one? Has he been unlucky? Has he been slow away? I'm going to go against you again, Tom, because don't you think my one thing that I'm excited about is the amount of rain that they've had in Ireland? They're going to make this ground is going to be slow. It was fast at Sandown, and you possibly could see even a better Vadeni on that softer going. What do you think of that?
Yeah, no, I think that's perfectly plausible. Look, I would definitely not be surprised if Vadeni won this race. I think you have every reason to go for him, even at a relatively short price. I think he probably is the most likely winner. Based on form, the fact he's still improving as a 3-year-old, the fact, as you mentioned, the ground condition will suit him. But let's not forget that Mishriff is also a heavy ground winner. So it's definitely not a negative in his camp, albeit it is a positive for Vadeni.
Yeah, okay. So Vadeni, for me, you can shop around if you wanted to, but with SBK, we can might just squeeze out 11 to 8. But he is a horse that definitely comes here with all the credentials to continue on this fabulous trajectory for Jean-Claude Rouget, as this 3-year-old does. Luxembourg is interesting. He's in there. Ryan Moore's been very bullish about the horse that we'll see on Saturday. Will be a better horse than we saw in his reappearance in the Royal Whip last time at the Curragh. He really does need to build on that, but they had a lot resting on that horse earlier on in the season. And then quickly, TC, should we mention Ernesto? Obviously, he needs to reoppose Vadeni, but what did you make of his run when in the Prix de Jockey Club? Many said that he might have just been slight unlucky because he had to come from a long way back.
Yeah, he was scrubbed along for a long period of that race and basically looked like he was going to be tailed off at one point, but finished well into 5th, was beaten over 6.5 lengths, I think, by Vadeni. It would be hard to see that form turn around, but last time out in the Grand Prix de Paris, it was a big step forward, beat Eldar Eldarov, who we previously covered in the St. Ledger. So he's a player. I don't know too much about him, if I'm being honest. I'd rather back him, though, around 8-1 than Luxembourg, who I think still continues to be a hype horse rather than a proven quantity. Now, I know he's won the Burton Futurity, but to my eye, he wasn't that impressive that day. Certainly wasn't impressive in the Royal Whip. Aidan's won this for the last 3 years, but I don't know with him. I can't be backing him at that kind of price. So maybe Ernesto's the 3rd best horse in this race.
Yeah, it's what's good about this compared to the Eclipse, where we didn't know where the pace was going to come from. We got Stone Age, and importantly, you got Broome in there. So I think it's going to be running a decent gallop, and I think that's going to be set up better for Vadeni. So that's where I'm siding with. But Mishriff for TC in the Irish Champion Stakes. So you've got 2 feature Group 1s in the space of 15 minutes on Saturday, and a good look at them, but as we've said, there's definitely outside of that, over the course of the weekend, you see so much you can choose from. I'm sure you've only prioritised Lingfield in your mind and the rest of the American racing, but I'd imagine there is probably something tasty at Doncaster or tasty in Ireland. What have you gone for your bet of the week?
Well, the Nap and the Place Play are both at Lingford, as you previously mentioned. I did look at Doncaster. I had to say there are a couple that are interesting, but I just don't know what price they're going to be at the moment. So I left them out. Sunday's very interesting as well at the Curragh, at Leopardstown. Sorry, we've got some top quality action. A couple of Aidan O'Brien juveniles are running there. But let's get back to the Nap, and that's Gordon's Aura in the 5 o'clock at Lingfield. Now, this horse isn't going to be a big price. Don't get me wrong. He's a son of Golden Horn. In typical Sir Mark Prescott fashion, last year in the autumn, he ran in 3 quickfire maidens, 2 over 7 furlongs, 1 over a mile, got himself a lowly handicap mark. This horse is bred for much further. He returned this year in June, was sent off 8 to 13 in a handicap, just a very one-paced. But I think he probably needed a run. We didn't see him at his best. Last time out at Yarmouth, much better effort. He got beaten, but by a horse who's previously racked up a hat-trick, I think that effort was pretty useful. He now steps up to 2 mile, and I can't really see Gordon's Aura being beaten in the 5 o'clock at Lingfield, Jess.
Okay, Gordon's Aura, Lingfield, fabulous. We love to give you a bit of everything, especially 5 o'clock when things might not have gone right throughout the afternoon, but you're still looking for something to keep you interested. For myself, as we touched upon, it is Irish Champions Weekend. I'm lucky enough to be there over the course of Saturday and Sunday. And Saturday is what I have already had a good look at. And the Boomerang Mile at 4:20 has long been a race that I've been intrigued in. I think it's a good indicator and can be set up for some horses that go on to the Breeders' Cup Mile as well, and you just get some speed-based milers in this race. I don't think it's the best edition that we've had before. I think Boundless Ocean for Jim Bolger will probably be favourite. I'm intrigued and very excited that Simon and Ed Crisford are bringing over Jadumi. Last seen winning the Celebration Mile at Goodwood, was sent over to France where he won the listed race as well. He's a horse that really relishes some give underfoot. They've got Christophe Soumillon booked, which is a great booking, but the Simon Ed Crisford form, I mean, what can we say? They're just having a serious purple patch. One horse they've brought over to Ireland, that is Jadumi, and I think that he's a really likeable type for Irish Champions Weekend in the Boomerang Mile at Leopardstown. It could even be a bit of a place play, but I think there's just 8 runners. So I'd imagine his price might get even shorter, but hopefully you can get around 6-1. Place play time then at Lingfield again for UTC.
Yeah, so Lingfield, the 3:19 at Lingfield. Now, this is obviously the place play section, but I was very tempted to put this filly up as the nap. I actually think she's a win play, but I'm just putting her up in this place play section because I don't really know what price she's going to go off. It's really hard to predict. She's a horse called Puffing. And this filly has been in my tracker since she made her debut last year at Kempton. She was really impressive that day for Rafe Beckett. I like Rafe Beckett's juveniles that win at Kempton, or the ones that are placed as well. I think he tends to send his best horses to there and to Newmarket. And Puffing won really impressively, as I say, that day. She was immediately touted as being a 1,000 guineas horse on the back of that effort, though she suffered a setback during the spring and therefore didn't make the Classic at Newmarket. She then returned in June after a real long absence. I backed her, but at the same time, I knew it was a pretty difficult race, and it actually panned out to be just that. The winner is now rated 105, the runner-up's rated 99, and the third is rated 93, so it was a very good maiden. She was far too keen. She was ridden very aggressively early on, and she was fourth, bang in there with every chance with a furlong to go. But she just weakened. She blew up in the closing stages after the long absence, and eventually finished right at the back of the TV. Now she returns with a first-time hood on, which should hopefully help her settle and help her take a lead in the race, off the mark of just 77. For a filly that was considered good enough to win or compete in the 1,000 guineas, I think Puffing has a great chance in this handicap, the 3:19 at Lingfield.
Okay, Puffing, out of Puff, I think she is, who's a really good race mare for Rafe Beckett as well. Really intriguing to see her back after a spell on the sidelines. So Puffing and Rafe Beckett in great order as well. So that is a place play for TC, but you can be punchy and go for a win as well. He's got confidence behind him, behind her, I should say. For me, another filly from a place play perspective. And I was intrigued, as we mentioned earlier, that Sean Levy's been given the ride aboard Emily Dickinson, which is a big call up for an Aidan O'Brien horse. Emily Dickinson ran an extraordinary race at Goodwood last time out in the Lily Langtree, when you remember Urban Artist went off and pulled clear by about 15 lengths. And the pack came back, but Emily Dickinson was pretty much stone last. I think Ryan Moore might have got a little bit wrong that day. He never normally does, but I don't think he judged it as well as Tom Marquand did, who was able to get the first run and go past Urban Artist. Yes was also in the race as well. Be really intrigued to see how Yes and Urban Artist get on at Doncaster today. They're both lining up in a fillies only event, but Emily Dickinson, she stayed on really well. She showed that she can definitely stay that 1 mile 6 furlongs that the Lily Langtree trip was. And the fact that they pitched her in here, they obviously don't have a good enough colt, but they've decided to run her. She's around 20-1. You could find worse 20-1 shots, being by Dabawi, out of Chiquita. why not? I think that's quite nice value there for the St. Ledger, which is bang open. So Emily Dickinson for my place play. A reminder that SBK has placed only odds on all races. So that is our pitch to you all for this weekend. TC, we'll give you the floor now for your stat attack. Again, I can't remember what you had last weekend, but I do find these stat attacks intriguing.
Neither can I did this. This is 2 weeks in a row. I can't even remember what I put up last weekend. I don't think it was successful, I have to say. Oh, no, it was. It was successful. It was Carl Burke at Thirsk, and he had a winner out of his 3 representatives. So it was successful, but it was against my nap. So that's probably why I forgot about it. Yes, this week's stat attack, I think the second time in the last 4 weeks, it's going to revolve around Frankie Dettori. And this is a jockey booking that really caught my eye when I looked at the entries for Saturday. He has a 14% strike rate, which doesn't necessarily sound amazing, but a £1 level stakes profit of plus £22.13 when he rides for Andrew Balding in his career. In the last 5 years, they've only teamed up once, and that horse won at 18-1. They're teaming up again on Saturday for the first time in a long time on a horse called Chaldine in the Group 2 Champagne Stakes. It looks a match between Chaldine and a horse that's trained by Charlie Appleby. They're going to go off around 5-4 favourites, I imagine, both of them. It's 220 at Doncaster, but I just thought it was a really interesting jockey booking. Andrew Balding would have had the choice of a few, I'd say, and the fact that Frankie Dettori is taking the ride for the first time on this lightly raced sort, I think is very interesting.
Yeah, because David Probert would be there, as he's on Huyamal a little later and has won on this horse, but Frankie Dettori gets the call up and obviously is very familiar in the Juddmonte colours. So we'll see how Chaldine gets on, as you said, up against Silver Knot, and I'm surprised actually looking at it, probably gets slightly bigger odds on Chaldine and hasn't done anything wrong at all. So intriguing horses, some very good racing this weekend, plenty of racing, very good quality action, and hopefully we provide a little bit of insight. TC and I are firmly taking each other on in most of the races that both races that we've covered. So best of luck to you, TC. A reminder, as always, that new SBK customers can get £30 in free bets by depositing £10. T's and C's always apply. Remember to subscribe to whatever podcast channel. TC, I'm sure you're back with some American insight for a good selection of racing this weekend.
Actually, we're not, and I'll tell you why. Because Saratoga unfortunately finished on Monday, literally my favourite meeting of the year. In New York, they need a little break after 40 days of virtually straight racing. So Aqueduct returns next week. Saturday night selections will be back then. Really looking forward to that meet as well. So I'm sure if you tune into that podcast, which goes live on a Friday, as well as this podcast on a Thursday every week, then hopefully we can provide plenty of winners for you.
Okay, well, keep up the good content, TC. I'm sure we'll be back with Ross Millar very soon. And make sure to listen out to the SBK Ambassador content. There's a great piece of content out at the moment with George Bowie discussing Huyamal. So best of luck to our SBK Ambassador. Thank you for joining us again, as ever, and we will see you very soon.